Hello, I am Courtney Henderson, doctoral student in the University of Miami's Applied Learning Sciences program. Thank you for viewing this presentation, a culmination of TAL 651, Effective Relational and Cultural Factors and Processes in Learning. As a higher education professional interested in how learning through tutoring can assist and equip students to learn in the classroom on their own, this is the learning environment that I've chosen to study for my larger project in this program and also for this final project. The specific writing center of focus is the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. I am a former faculty tutor in this particular writing center. One element that differentiates this writing center from the majority of those across higher education institutions in the U.S. is who exactly are the tutors. So long-term tutors are faculty members in UM's English Composition Department, adjunct faculty members in the department as well, and short-term tutors are incoming graduate students who are pursuing either an MA, an MFA, or a PhD. So the majority of writing centers in the US only have peer-to-peer tutoring. So this is one element that is unique in this particular learning setting. So with this difference also comes a difference in the tutees. So graduate students from all of the different schools across the university utilize this resource, as well as faculty members who are working on publications, grant writing, or even conference presentations. So the University of Miami Writing Center offers one-on-one sessions and also holds dissertation writing workshops available to all doctoral students, as well as sessions specifically tailored to different topics that can range from organization to thesis statement, development, literature reviews, or analyzing and observation. So that's a little bit of what goes on in this particular learning setting. So who exactly is utilizing this resource? So from the data that I collected during the spring semester, it was fairly typical of what I was used to seeing when I was a tutor in this particular writing center. So that meant that clients and tutees were staff members, faculty members, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, graduate students, and also students in the IEP program. Those who were coming to utilize this resource were also coming from every school across the university, so the law school, the medical school, nursing, business administration, arts and sciences, continuing studies, every single program. Something else to take in mind in terms of who exactly is utilizing this resource is what's the first language or home language that they selected. So only 56% of those who utilized this resource said that their first or home language was English. So this is actually where we see one of the first discontinuities within this particular learning setting. And I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge and point out what are the other first or home languages of those who are using this resource. So just under 5% reported that their first language or home language was Arabic. Just under 15% said that it was Chinese. 1% said that it was French. Another 1% said that it was Japanese. Just under 5% said that it was Korean. Just over 3% selected other. Just under 3% selected Portuguese. 1% selected Russian. And 11% selected Spanish. The first disconnect or discontinuity is that of language. So in the previous slide, you heard about the first or home language of the majority of those who utilized this resource. Less than 60% had a first language, which was English. However, over 90% of the tutors have a first and home language, which is English. Also, just over 90% of the tutors are white, and the majority of the tutors are women. So there are certainly some differences between those who are leading the tutoring sessions and those who are coming in to utilize this resource, just in terms of language as well as cultural or ethnic background. At the center of self-determination theory are the basic needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. All other elements can easily be tied back to these three core needs. Within the Writing Center, since a session might be only a one-time occurrence, how tutors can meet these needs in a short period of time can be a bit more challenging in comparison with a teacher who might be able to incorporate these elements over the course of a semester or even a full academic year. One of the needs that is already inherent in the Writing Center is the premise of autonomy. Ryan and Deci describe this as the need to self-regulate one's experiences and actions. Autonomy is a form of functioning associated with feeling congruent and integrated. The hallmark of autonomy is that one's behaviors are self-endorsed or congruent with one's authentic interests and values. Now, in the Writing Center, what this might look like is the tutor empowering the student to lead the session, focusing on their areas of most concern. Minimalist tutoring, first discussed in the Writing Centers by Brooks in 1991, has a focus on both autonomy and competence. In this setting of an hour or less, minimalist tutoring relies on tutors simply guiding students, but it's the student author who takes the lead in what needs to be done next within the paper and even in the one-on-one session. Vygotsky's concept of scaffolding is also very common in Writing Center work and ties in with the self-determination theory need of competence. When thinking about competence within a Writing Center, it's also important to keep in mind that Ryan and Deci explain how this is a core element in motivated actions. Now, within a Writing Center, motivation is key, as we do not want students to use this service thinking that their paper will just be edited for them as they sit back. Rather, they should be motivated to be active participants in the revision process, taking the lead by showing autonomy, and with the tutor as a support, providing positive feedback about their competence. Now, if only negative feedback is provided, or the focal point, then the feeling of mastery can be diminished, and a student's own personal criticism might take the forefront. In the context of writing, this is crucial, as many students already enter a classroom with a negative self-perception about their writing abilities. So if a tutor is going to be an assist in meeting the need of competence, they must be mindful of their word choice and how they guide and correct. Niet and Bode explain how accepting cultural differences among students means that provisions should also be made for these differences, and that when students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds are viewed as strengths on which educators can draw and build, then pedagogy can change to incorporate students' lives. So when this is done, students are able to show up in the classroom as their full authentic self, as discussed in Ryan and Deci. And the same is true in the Writing Center. So in this particular context, it looks like a space where a student is able to freely speak about their writing concerns. So one instance in the data that I collected from spring 2021 of student responses, there was a Writing Center session that was an example where this was not the case. So the student, whose first language was not English, wanted the session to focus on how their main idea was coming across. So basically higher order concerns such as a thesis statement, topic sentences, and overall conveying their main idea. However, upon seeing that the student was an international student, the tutor chose to spend the entire session focused on grammatical errors, within the essay, which are considered lower order concerns. Now, this is concerning because an assumption was made that this is what the student needed because of the linguistic background, when in reality, lower order concerns such as spelling and grammar should truly only be addressed after higher order concerns about the content are met. This was an example in this particular learning setting where the linguistic background was seen as a deficit, and that led the session, much to the dismay of the student. When it comes to instances of cultural discontinuity, it is vital to keep the notion of hybridity at the forefront and the fact that identities are changing. Going back to the reading, where we've briefly discussed the difference between horizontal identity and vertical identity. As students are entering college, they are changing identities, becoming more autonomous. All of these things play into their sense of self as well as authenticity. So in the Writing Center, some of these ideas or concepts can be a bit harder to grasp or apply when there's not a weekly continual interaction of teacher and student in a classroom that lasts for an entire semester or again over the course of a full school year. However, when some of the initial needs are met of a student according to self-determination theory, in that very first session, it is likely for the student to make future appointments with the same tutor. Now, in this instance, there is at least movement along the right path as evidenced by the return of the student to this voluntary learning setting and the intentional choosing of the same tutor. It is then up to the tutor to address some of the other discontinuities within a session, and if rapport has been established, the student might even feel comfortable enough to share about instances of cultural or linguistic discontinuities within one or more of their classes. Now, some tutors are already great at building relationships with students, just like Yahira's case study that we read about in Niet and Bod. This can make all the difference when there is that difference between the tutor and tutee. Now, the potential implications for learning here are great, especially considering that this is supposed to be a support resource. So to better see this in context, the Writing Center is now a part of the Learning Commons in the Richter Library as of 2017. So prior to this, the Writing Center was housed solely in the English department. Now with this move, it had a larger purpose. So on the University of Miami Learning Commons website, it says that the purpose of this space is to provide support through the co-location, coordination, and enhancement of existing academic services, complementing the classroom experience, and that this particular space should be able to help students in all disciplines pursue their own intellectual goals in conversation with peers and experts, and with access to scholarly and creative resources. So the Learning Commons is physically located in the library to increase the accessibility of services. And these services and resources include not only the Writing Center, but also the Kamner Center for Academic Resources, Academic Technologies, the Math Lab, among others. So with the goal of this learning setting being to enhance what is taking place in the classroom, but with the advantage of being in a one-on-one setting, there's actually a lot at stake that can be lost if a student doesn't feel a sense of belonging when they enter and first interact with someone in this space. Linguistic discontinuities and cultural discontinuities are two areas of great personal interest to me because of my academic background and my own experiences. In the learning setting of the University of Miami Writing Center, these discontinuities are indeed at play. For example, having taught EFL has influenced how I see the connection between culture, identity, learning, and language. Many students who I worked with over a longer period of time in the Writing Center were students for whom there were these linguistic discontinuities in the classroom. I believe that how multilingualism is addressed in the classroom can also have a vast impact on students. In the Writing Center, discussing my own experiences with students while introducing myself at the start of a session is one opportunity to show them how, as their tutor, I value the different experiences, identities, and perspectives that they are bringing to the session, and that I'm eager to learn more. It was through these interactions that some international students who I worked with continuously ended up referring their friends to select me when they made an appointment at the Writing Center, even working with some until graduation, as seen in the picture here. When rapport was established by providing a sense of belonging, that's when progress was able to be made. Beginning with funds of knowledge, it is fitting for a tutor to delve into what experiences the student might be bringing to the paper, or even what ideas they have in mind. Students can also schedule a session when they're still in the planning stages of an assignment, and when this is the case, the tutor can ask explicit questions, making connections between the assignment prompt and the out-of-classroom knowledge that the student is coming to the assignment with. This can foster a sense of belonging early on by showing that the Writing Center is a space that acknowledges and values the different resources that students bring to their writing, and that they're more than just a student who is part of the UM family, but also a member of a cultural or ethnic group that has its own ways of knowing. Going back to the fact that many international students often use this resource, I think it's a great way to potentially honor what the student is bringing from their own funds of knowledge instead of only focusing on this is how it's done in the US or just grammatical errors as in the prior example. Another pedagogical strategy that could be beneficial in this learning setting as well is UDL. Universal design for learning has a key tenet of flexibility. For example, flexibility in how information is presented, ways in which students can show their knowledge, and even in engagement. At UM, prior to COVID, Writing Center sessions were all conducted in the same way, and there was not much flexibility with other methods or incorporation of technology. Since the forced incorporation of technology, it is time to consider which new practices to keep because they're beneficial to students and which things to change. One option is to continue to allow virtual Writing Center sessions be an option for students instead of only in person on campus. Also, one common practice across many writing centers, including at UM, is for the student to read their paper aloud from a hard copy brought in, which the tutor follows along and takes notes. While this does have great benefit to native speakers of English based on research, many students are able to catch some of their mistakes as they hear it and it sounds off to them. However, for students for whom English is not their first language, this native speaker intuition is not going to kick in to alert them that something sounds wrong. And as seen earlier in the presentation, just under 50% of those who utilized the Writing Center in the spring semester said that English was not their first or home language. Then, incorporating funds of knowledge would allow tutors to sustain the core elements of focusing on higher order concerns of the assignment while still bringing in students' own personal experiences and how that might impact how they view or even approach the writing task. With UDL, I do think that native English speakers who are not dyslexic should still read their paper aloud because of the proven research benefits. However, providing other options for non-native speakers can eliminate frustration or this cumbersome task that wouldn't necessarily yield any or the same benefits.